So getting started, just be aware that you have the assignments are available as the sidebar or on the main page. When you click on those, it's going to take you into the list. There are 11 assignments in the final. I haven't looked at what the total points are. I usually try to get them to be 1,000, so the math comes out to kind of nice to where, you know, wherever you're at, that's the percentages. And so some of these points might change. The progression is that we do the mill, we do a couple of lathe, and then there are a couple of solid parts to go into the mix. And then the final is kind of your choice. I have to find the geometry, but I'm going to give you either your choice of the DWG file, a standard 3-view print, a Parasolid, an IGES, and the original SolidWorks file. So you can kind of load all three, decide which one you want to work from, and go from there. So getting into the assignment, first thing we need to do is kind of set up our work area. But when you're looking at these and you're from the Mastercam book, we're going to draw for convenience. So if you look at one of these and if you're striking out on your own, you look at one of these and you see that they put the origin at the center of the part, that's fine for creating the geometry. If you want to create the geometry that way, or use a center rectangle, or put in the values. But machining, that's not going to be my origin. I'm going to put this on the upper left just out of habit, and then we'll decide stock size or whatever we need to do for making the program. So the other thing would be where they have the section views. This is a a jog section, so it's showing through the center and then jogs over and goes through the hole. So if it was straight through, you wouldn't see that whole diameter as a through. So you just kind of have to look at the print. Some of them are a little strange. I don't detail, and we're not going to put dimensions out of Mastercam. If you need a detailed drawing, go into SolidWorks, go into Autodesk product, find something. Mastercam will work for you, but it's not the easiest, and the workflow is a little painful to get these dimensions into your work area. All right, so switching over to Mastercam, one of the first things, yes.
Sorry, quick question on that, Jerry. When we program for say assignment 1 right here, so I'm seeing 2 mill operations on this part.
Pretty much.
Okay, so we're gonna when we make it, we take it from our bar stock and finish
right.
all surfaces.
Right, and one of the first conversations on every assignment will be, what is the stock? Are we making 1, 10, 100, 1,000, or I'm running this forever? Right, and those are going to drive some of our decisions. Usually we're between 1 and 100. All right, so we can start off and then fine tune and refine as we go. The first pass is to get it out to the machine and get it running. And once it's running, then I can take that code and go back and say, okay, I've observed what the machine is doing, what I have for tooling, what its what its capabilities are. Now I can react to it, come back to the program and say, okay, we need to speed that up a little bit. I'm going to change that lead in. I watched it lead in for a whole half an inch, and that was 10 seconds that I don't need to waste cutting air. One of the things I always say is air is easy to cut, but it's not cheap. We want to be close, but we don't want to be jamming tools into the parts and breaking tools, scrapping parts. So somewhere in between, we're going to find our happy spots. All right, so that's going to be a discussion at the beginning of every project, is get into that habit. And some of them, we're going to make that decision in like 30 seconds or less. Some of them are, wow, I'm looking at this as even running 100 of them, it's going to be to my advantage to go ahead and set those. We're going to set those as a multiple vices, and then we have to deal with work offsets and jumping, and then, okay, if I'm jumping left to right, I want it to do the typewriter. I don't want it to come all the way back to the left. I want it to stay at the right, change the tool, pick up the operation, work back and forth across the table, so I'm not doing unnecessary rapids. All right, but sometimes that just becomes a let's post it and I'll edit it at the control. But from a documentation standpoint, depending on our organization, if we are in an ISO or a certified or a QMS system that says each program will have a documentation trail, we're really not supposed to be editing at the control. Or if we edit at the control, then that program has to be saved back as a modified program with the file structure so that everything is traceable. If I run this again in 3 months, I may post the code out again, but I want to see what we did or what we changed as we went through that process. So that's always kind of just hanging there in the back of my mind, is how critical is this documentation trail? Yes.
But when you do that, you could also just put it in your notes.
Yeah. If you are disciplined enough to put it in your notes, a lot of my example is I wrote a program for the little brass threaded nuts, and we went and looked down through 30 programs and could not tell what the tools were, could not tell what it was, when it was run, how it was run, who ran it. They wrote it at the control, they ran it for that run, and it is now a mystery, and I do not run mysteries. I delete them. Yeah. So if that was your program, I'm sorry, but I erased it because I can't tell what it is, and looking at the simulation on the screen does not give me enough information about what you did and why you did it. Right? So if I don't have a tool list, if I don't have even basic instructions, it's gone. I'm glad you were able to run it and get those parts made, but they do me no good. Yeah.
I looked at a couple of these assignments. I don't see any tolerance.
Wide open. Let's go back and check the tolerances. So
are we looking at essentially plus or minus 5 on everything?
Standard tolerance is plus or minus 5 unless it's called out specific. So we may take a few. For example, say I want to ream, drill and ream for the 250. All right, well, that's going to put us at plus or minus half a thou. All right, but standard tolerances, and really the expectation is that if we've roughed and we've done finished passes the way we're supposed to, engaging comp, utilizing the comp effectively, understanding our tool sizes, that carbide tools typically come in between 1.5 and 3 thousandths undersized just because of the grind, then I'm not concerned about that as a program. A 1/2-inch tool is a 1/2-inch tool. When I get out to the machine and I run that tool around the part and I measure my first article and it says it's 4 thousandths oversized, I go in and I comp 4 thousandths and I move the tool over and it cuts 4 thousandths more. I should be, by the 10th part, I should be plus or minus 1 thousandth on every part. If all things considered. So, it's just kind of playing with the numbers and juggling the numbers and understanding the capabilities of the machine, knowing where to find those tool registers, and, at what point at 1 inch, if I'm using a 1/2-inch tool with a 1 1/4 inch length of cut, if I get a little bit of taper, maybe I take a spring pass, right? I'm going to build those into my cycle times and make decisions as we go. So good questions. All right, so before we start drawing, main thing is to get the screen comfortable, right? Because you're going to be looking at this for X amount of hours a day or however long it takes to program. So a couple of the things that I would like to be able to change is I'm not doing surfaces, I'm not doing solids. Let's see, what is model prep? That's still solids. I could probably do without the drafting, but we'll leave that one on. Transforming is basically editing tools. So any of the versions where you see a transform, you're making changes to the geometry. So that one's very necessary. And then when we get into setting up for the machine and the posting the operations, that'll be out of the machine tab. And then the view, how do we want to view, where are the wireframes, the shading, those types of things. So if I come up into the gray area, we're going to first customize the ribbon. And on the right side, these are all of the things that are being shown. So I can uncheck model prep, solids, surfaces. Yes, we need wireframe. Yes, we need view. And then drafting's kind of a lower priority for me, even though I want to see it. I'm going to move it to the end of the list. All right, so each time I click the down arrow, it jumps, and when we accept, I'm going to see this upper bar change. Okay, so I hit OK. So the solids and the surfaces that I'm not using are now in the background. They're still there. I can get to them, but they're not, they're not immediately accessible. I would have to right-click and come back to the ribbon and say, okay, now I want to see solids. I'm doing something with solids. Okay, we're going to right-click again, and let's go with the Quick Access toolbar. Oh, all right, so that one was the ribbon. So both of those go to the same place. The Quick Access is coming across the top. New, save, open, print, save as, zip to go, undo, redo. All right, so if this follows the Windows style, then let's just jump back to home. And if I right click, add to quick access toolbar, we'll pretty much throw that paste command up at the end of the very top bar. All right, so we can add or take away. And then the next one would be to do the little pull down, and then the standard commands are available. So if I didn't want to be able to print, then I would just uncheck the print and that icon goes away. So if depends on how, where you're at with Windows, this following the standard Windows format of being able to get to those quick access. Let's see, the other one is the right mouse button, so hopefully I can navigate to it. The context menu, in effect, is the right mouse button. All right, so let's see, 2D toolpaths, and then we have lots of choices. So you kind of have to know where you're going, what you're looking for. And since it's been a little while, then we'll probably have to pick a few. So on the screen there is a clear colors. That one's going to come in handy. So just as an example, I'm going to highlight the clear colors and I'm going to add it. It adds at the end. And I want to say the fit. And that one should be able to move down too, but I don't see the down arrows. Let's see if we can drag. All right, so if I don't get those little down arrows to move it down at every sequence, then in this menu I can left click the mouse button and drag it to the end of the list. All right, and that one popped out. I'm sure there's something else in there that I would want to modify. Let's see, on the options, the bottom, themes, the background, or the accent color in blue. And I thought I saw one on the the show quick access toolbar below the ribbon. If you're using that, it will take the bar and add a little strip in between the ribbon and the top of the work area and move it to that location. But it consumes a little bit of your work area because it doesn't get rid of the title bar. So you're still going to have the title bar, you're just going to have extra over there. So I don't really use the quick access. It's there, it's handy. But if it's part of your workflow, then we'll make it accessible. All right, and then these were the recents. I'm not in the habit of using them very much, so when we run across that one, I will see about turning those off. So under File, when you go to File, it goes to the backdrop. Yeah, I'm still learning that terminology. It goes into this screen, and we have info for the project, repairing files, auto saving, opening in the editor would be the Mastercam editor for the posted code. And then we keep going down and get to, well, let's see what configuration does first. That was the one I was looking for. All right, so this is all of the background settings. All right, so things like the screen color. I'm not real fond of the gradient. I would rather have solid solid white or solid black, but the gradient doesn't appeal to me. So let's see, backplotting is a simulation, is kind of an archive simulation. CAD settings for line weights, bounding box previews, no. Chaining operations. So when we apply toolpaths, that's going to be called a chain. That we're giving it a direction, we're giving it definition of what we want those tools to do. So if the chain isn't behaving, then we'll come in here and make adjustments. And then we finally get down to colors, which is what I'm looking for. And right now, the gradient start, the background gradient end. And when we click on those, we're going to have the gray and the white. But I believe there is another one. So everything's available to change. Don't go too crazy changing colors until we see the results. So I was thinking that there was another. Okay, well, we can always go with the gradient start and the gradient end being the same. And if I hit the plus, and this is going to be a standard throughout Mastercam, when you hit the plus, that applies. And it's going to tell me that it is updating that configuration. And then when I hit yes, my screen goes to the black background. All right, so when we go to turn the grid on, then I should be able to find grid points. All right, so grid is in gray. That's going to be a little bit difficult to see. So we'll go with the white points. All right, and if you have a different color combination, you can kind of experiment with these and go with colors like, I think this shows up better on the video as well. So that's kind of what I'm working towards. And then there should be a selection. All right, so for geometry, all right, the selection is in yellow, which is okay. And we'll have to see what that looks like. All right, so I'm just kind of scanning back and forth through here, looking at the terminology just to get a sense, and then nothing's changed, so the plus is grayed out. And gradient direction, we just turn that off. All right, so if you're going to use the Mastercam or the editor as your communications, used to be our RS-232 or Ethernet, then we can send directly from Mastercam, but you need to have that connection set up to the machine. Converters are how the Parasolids, the ASUS engine, and AutoCAD versions, what versions will accept. I believe, oh, and those are export versions. Sorry, I was thinking if we save back out. Now, the education versions don't export the information back to any of these. So when we're importing whatever translated into that geometry, so SolidWorks, any of the Autodesk products, we would probably go back a version or two. But since they're listed as 29.1, I would probably go to 28 in the Parasolids. And I would have that option in the file that I'm outputting. So when it comes in, I'm guaranteed. So if I'm requesting from a customer, hey, send me over a Parasolid, send me over an AutoCAD file, go back to 2000 or go back to something that's a little bit earlier, and then I'm reasonably sure that I'm not going to have any issues opening it. The default machines, if we're doing, we have mill, lathe, router, and wire. If we've set up definitions for each of those machines, then we can set those as the default rather than it going to the defaults. Right? So when I pick a Haas mill, I'm going to set that as the default. So when we on the class computers, we can post code. If we take that code out to the shop, then each time I run the mill module, it will default to that machine, right? Rather than going back to the previous. If you are doing any kind of drafting CAD, then you have options for the dimensions, notes, leaders, witness, dimension settings, files and file locations, right? So a lot more information than you really need. And I think I've only changed one or two of these in the 15 or 16 years I've been using Mastercam. So Autosave, if you have a system that is maybe not as robust as it should be to run Mastercam, or you are doing a lot of multi-axis, 3-axis, 4th-axis position, 4th-axis simultaneously, 5-axis to position, 5-axis simultaneous. That's going to be very graphics intensive. It's going to take up a lot of resources. It's really doing a lot of math. So in that case, you would probably either want to autosave or create a backup file every so often, so that in the event of a crash, you're not losing everything. You're maybe backing up 10 minutes. So the autosave interval, 60 minutes, that's a little bit long. I would think 10 minutes is a reasonable amount of time to, if you don't hit Control S after a major operation, 10 minutes would be something that's acceptable to lose. Post dialogues, where is it going to go? What are we telling it to do? Printing goes out to hard copy, printing it out to the laser printers. Same with the reports. We are going to take a look, not initially, but as we get a little further along, generating setup sheets. So making the pretty pictures of, here is the stock, here's the first operation, here's the tools for the first operation, here's the RPM. And then the expectation would be, instead of that data going out to the shop floor, never to be seen again, is if my setup guy, if my operator makes a change at the machine, just like we're talking about, they would note it on that, hey, you need to update the program. And then also it lets me know that we need to grab that program back off of the control, so it becomes part of our database. There used to be, under screen, if you were having graphics issues, maybe they brought up to the drivers. Let's go down one more to the, well, we're going to do grid settings. There used to be one called OpenGL, and if your mouse was not behaving properly, I would say, well, go find the OpenGL, switch it from hardware to software, and that typically took care of the mouse issues, the selection issues. So if you are running an older version, let's see, they went from X9 to what, 2016? So, or X9 to X and then to 2016. So 2015 and before, if you encounter a version of the software that's older, that would be something to look into. All right, we get to the grid settings. And then let's see, I got to think. I think it's under view. We go turn the grid on, so we'll look for that. Don't shift the origin. Origin is at 0, 0. We'll move the part. We'll move it in position. When we start moving the origin one way and the part the other way, then it's kind of one of those pick one. This is not convenient to get to. So transforming our geometry to a better location in relation to the origin is going to be preferable to the making the adjustments here. What I do want is the grid spacing. We have a size of 25 inches. All right, so that is 12.5 inches negative X, 12.5 inches positive X, 12.5 inches positive Y, 12.5 inches negative Y. And at 25 or quarter inch 250 spacing, that is going to be an awful lot of dots. So I'm not going to tell it to snap to this spacing, to those grid marks. So if I were to put in 1 inch spacing, that would give me a reasonable reference for filling up the screen, having that work area. Yeah.
So that size of 25 inches, say you have a table that's larger than that. If you limited at 25, can you still
Yeah, that is
pass
not
that?
the 25 is not a limiter
Just
saying that you can't. So, for example, the router had that I ran had a two tables that were 5 by 8 foot, and so the full length of the router was 16 feet. When I drew those parts, or I put them in parts, I actually would let the grid go up to something like 5 feet, so at least I had kind of the reference for the width of the table. But then the other 11 feet out was just wherever it placed it. And then, of course, my 1-inch spacing all of a sudden went to little dots, so I would tell it maybe 12-inch spacing. All right, and you just kind of set it up and react to what the machine is doing there. So, and these, same thing. Once we apply, it's going to say write it to the configuration file, and then that just kind of saves it along the way. Let's see, you don't really need to do anything under view sheets, view settings. Always just kind of look. The middle button wheel, the all important, if you're used to AutoCAD and need to reverse the wheel, you have to know where this one is at. So if you zoom in and it is going one way and you want it to zoom the other, we're going to come in here and tell it to reverse the middle mouse button, the scroll wheel, so that it goes the way you expect it to. So when I actually get some geometry up and I scroll, I'm going to see which way it goes. If it's going the way I want, then I'm done. Otherwise, I'm coming back to this screen and rotating. Also, do you want to pan around the screen or rotate? At least initially, we're not going to be doing a lot of XZ or YZ movements, but it is kind of handy at some point to rotate your 2D drawing a little bit into the isometric or the trimetric and say, yeah, those tool depths are all going into the part and not floating around above the screen because I put in positive numbers instead of negative numbers. All right, so some little error checking is helpful with the rotate. And then we also have access to the pan tool on the in context right mouse button, so that if it's not there, we'll add it, and it's always up on the view screen. All right, shading is going to be for solids, and how you want to visualize those. Also, solid settings, the spin controls. So if you use the keyboard arrows, or you are picking with the mouse, how much do they increment or decrement as you hit each number. Starting and exiting, my configuration for the startup settings. There is my configuration, and notice that there is the standard English startup and the metric. So if you are working in metric, which I have programmed routers in metric, and you kind of go through that process of having to switch back and forth. If your part is in inch and you switch to metric, it will ask you, do you want to let the software scale? And most of the time, yes, you do. Or if you bring a metric part in, more importantly, you bring a metric part in, it's probably not going to read it. You are going to have to scale it yourself. So it just kind of depends on which is the default configuration. But we need to know where that MCAMX, because the classroom computer's reset, I'm going to go grab that file. I do not want to do this every time we do a lecture every week and have to go through and find these settings. So if I grab that file and know where that directory is at, or folder, I can copy it off of my flash drive or my external drive, put it into position, and then when Mastercam launches, it will launch with my settings regardless of if the computer's restarted or not. And because we changed, I'm not seeing the deep freeze reset, but don't take that for granted. If you save something on the computer, don't count on it being here. Default construction plane is the top, and the editor is Mastercam. You can switch it over to Notepad or something else. Mastercam is the Mastercam editor is a pretty good editor. Standard tolerance, mainly for curves, arcs. If it's calculating for a spline where it's putting in a million little points, how close do those points need to be together to give you a smooth surface? If we're not getting the desired result, well, chaining tolerance and planar at a tenth and a couple thousandths, that should be enough, but we can always try and make it a little tighter. Let's see, the manager. Yeah, we're just going to let it pick those. There was one. No, I'll have to find it, and then we have the tool paths. All right, so those all look pretty good, and then the wire backplot. So when it's doing the simulation on a wireframe, then what are the colors for the geometry? All right, so in the very bottom, then the current is that English. If I need to switch over to metric or switch from metric back to English, then you're going to do that right here. This is the only place. Okay, the only place that I know of to change from a metric system to an English system. Okay, so default is going to be English. We'll stay in there. I haven't given you any metric parts, but like I said, occasionally you may run into a machine that is native metric, and it's a lot easier to put that information out without having to do the conversions. All right, so when I accept that, that writes the, I've written all that to my configuration file. Let's see, under documents then, my MCAM 2018 and config and MCAMX. That's the file that I'm going to want to copy. Or let's see if I can just send it to my external hard drive. Hopefully, maybe. Hey, I've already done that. Well, let's replace. All right, so it's going to be a good idea to have that backup and be able to get to it. All right, so I don't see the grid, so that tells me under View, I'm going to look through here, and over to the right, we can show the grid. We're always going to get the dash 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 Y, dash 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 X, and then the small dots. Those are going to be actually they're a little visible. Better than the projector last semester, so the dots are at the 1-inch spacing. So it's just giving me a reference, and if I use the middle mouse wheel, it is going the way that I expect it to, so I don't have to go back. But if it doesn't respond the way you want it to, you'll go back into the configuration and reverse that mouse wheel. All right, so there's my 25 by 25 square with 1-inch spacing. Questions? All right, so again, we'll track down the video and get that posted. So when you're setting this up at home, you can go back through. So the takeaway on all of that was you have whatever 30 tabs, but really there's only about 5 of them that you need to be concerned with. It's navigating to those, and a lot of times I have to do just what I did, is just click through them and go, nope, 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 oh, there it is, nope, 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 there it is, nope. And you find the ones that you want, and you're working in that that environment. All right, so let's see, this was the recents. All right, so we switched through on the view. We have fit and the zoom, the graphics views, the appearances, being able to see the tool paths, showing the axes. So if I turn that off, just kind of the dash goes away. The okay, I still don't know how to pronounce that. As we turn on multi-axis, we're going to have the standard world coordinate system. In the corners, we will have additional coordinate systems based on the view that we're machining from. So we probably won't be doing that this semester, but be aware that that has a purpose when you start rotating and or doing multiple setups to where we want to flip the part over and do machining on the backside within the same program or same file. So let's go back to home. and we'll just kind of cruise through the home. We're going to stay probably on the wireframe most, at least wireframe and transform to generate the geometry. But things like the colors, we added the clear colors to the right mouse button in context. So if I come over to the home, then I also have access to clear colors. So as you're making selections and those selections override your object color, and then you get a bunch of selection colors and not so much object colors, at some point we'll want to clear those colors to start back with just the objects. All right, so that one's kind of handy. Select, set all. Be careful with the delete entities, mainly because when we import a CAD drawing, if it was taken from a 3D or from a wireframe, there could be lines stacked on top of lines, and when you're selecting for your geometry, the chain gets confused because it sees multiple objects there. So by erasing or deleting duplicates, then we're ensuring that there's only one object there to select, and the chain is going to be able to find it. Let's see, hide and unhide. And entities, all right, so showing, all right, the analyze, don't really need too much of those. All of our drawing tools will be in wireframe. So points and bolt circles to start, lines, parallel lines, lines perpendiculars, lines closest. What else do we have? Bisecting an angle, line through point. Most of the time I'm just going to draw lines or rectangles. All right, and then we offset it. So kind of the same with the circles. We'll have the point location, arcs, arc tangents, splines. So several different types of splines available. The rectangle tool, we can also do rectangular shapes. So oblongs, rectangles that already have fillets with them. The polygons, ellipses, helix, and spiral. Letters, so our true type fonts are available for selection to put engraving in. And then, let's see, rectangular, cylindrical, bounding for selected entities. That's, I usually reserve that for when we get into the toolpaths and we've done the setup and we're setting up the stock. So curves, that's a little bit of advanced geometry, probably more surfacing. Yeah, so create curves on surfaces. Trim, break, and extend. So this one's pretty good. We'll use it quite a bit. Break into two pieces. Join entities, break at intersection, break mini, trim mini, break at points, modify at the intersection. So a lot of times we'll trim or we'll just break the items as needed to. Mainly if we have a chain that needs to make a right turn or a left turn in the middle of another line, so that we can form our chains. Fillets and chamfers will be over here as well. So fillet and filleting chains. So filleting the chain, every vertex that it finds in that chain or in that group will get the fillet on it. And then chamfer entities, chamfer chains, offset you will use quite a bit. Projecting is more of a 3D thing. Arcs, and what do we have? Combining views. No, don't use those a whole lot. All right. So at the left, then we have the toolpaths, and so while we're drawing, we're really not doing anything in this screen. But this is where we're going to have the machine set up. This is where we're going to have a toolpath group. This is where we're going to start putting in those operations and being able to track the order that we're telling these tools to load and generate geometry. Under the solids, then, is same thing. If we had solids, we would be picking solid geometry rather than chains. So we're not really doing anything with that one. we will come over, and this is on the very bottom left in case you can't see that. Planes, when we set up for the back of the part, we want to change our construction and our tool plane to reflect that we're machining from the other side. And we'll save that for the end because that can get kind of confusing. And it's also a lead in into the multi-axis, right? So when we're doing fourth axis to position, then setting up those operations so that it knows the angles, knows where it's rotating to, becomes more critical. Levels are kind of like layers, but they are not, I guess, the color is not tied to the layer. So I can have layer 1 is my object geometry, layer 2 is my text, and they can all be in blue or they can all be in yellow. All right, so as you're making those selections, then you'll kind of go through. So certain things, if the geometry is complex enough, maybe we would filter and select for all of the quarter 20 holes and put those on, you know, the whole layer or whatever, and kind of try to take something that's really complicated and be able to make better selections by switching through the layers. And then the recent functions, that is pretty much also what this is doing. And let's see if I click. Right now it is docked, and if we switch it over to floating, then this is going to move around, and it has all of those little boxes. And where do you want to place it? Wow, that looks like it would take up a lot of real estate on the screen, so we'll leave it there, and we'll come back and leave it as docked. Let's see, if we do the Autohide, then we have to come over to the side. When I click on it somewhere, click on the name, then it's going to fly out, but that's going to get kind of annoying for the video, so I don't think I will do that. And hopefully I can turn it back off. Okay, that'll be for, no, it's not giving me the right. All right, so, and we'll pin it. The little push pin, that will get it. And then X closes it, and if we close it, we have to be able to turn it back on, and I think, okay, I don't want to do that because I haven't done that in a while, and I'm not quite sure if I remember where that was. All right, so once we're into the toolpaths, at the very least, I can go to the double-headed arrow and reduce that and make more screen area for myself, and move into position. All right, last, well, I guess second to last is the status bar across the bottom is position. So X, Y, and Z coordinates. The C plane, we're in the top, the tool plane's in the top, and the world coordinate system is top. There are times where you will be looking at it in an isometric view, machining from, you know, like the bottom or a plane that you created. So you're kind of just paying attention to those, making sure that you know what orientation, what references you're building from. And then do you want to see wireframe? Well, that's all we're going to do for a while. So going across the bottom, dimmed, the no hidden, outline shaded, and then with translucency. Across the top then, the heads up, cursors for the configuration. All right, so let's see, these are going to be the selections. All right, so pretty much the snaps. And when you're picking and you hover over an object, what it's going to show you. And then solid, edge, so pretty much filters, body selection from the back, and then a selection method. Right, so chains, windows, polygons, areas, vectors, and I don't use all of those. When you're making selections, we're telling it to select anything inside of the box. And then if we want outside of the box, we would switch. N plus would be crossing the box. All right, so as we drag the window around, there we go. And I say, hopefully I didn't get that one turned off on the colors. But is it just going to be what's inside of the box or whatever the box crosses? So the N plus is going to be like crossing. And then the intersection, I don't think I've used that one very much. So temporary center points, verify selections, invert selections, select last. All right, so we'll use a few of those. We'll use a few of these and keep going. Oh, and I didn't finish the command, our ribbon bar. So the transform, all of our editing tools. The machine then is picking which machines we're going to run. So we have mill, lathe, wire, router. And so if you're interested in wire EDM, we can look at doing that. The router has the ability, and I still can't remember what they say, but the side drilling holes where it comes in, that has the capability to drill those. The machine definitions, the simulation, posting the code, and then our setup sheets we mentioned, and then what kind of simulation and toolpaths. Coming back to the view, and actually I should move that over because we'll probably use view a little bit more than the machine. But we kind of ran through these already, and then the drafting, all of the dimensions, locations for dimensions, everything else. All right. So before we run too long here, let's go ahead and we'll jump back into Canvas and take a look at our part. We have to decide early on if we're going to draw this at the center. Would not be my personal preference. But let's see what we have for options in the rectangle tool. Yes?
I have a question. Since it's symmetrical, why wouldn't you do it from the center?
Oh, as far as programming or? More.
Wouldn't it be easier to program from 0, 0?
It depends on the stock. We haven't made a stock selection, so if I have material that's 2.5 by 2.5, then I'm probably just going to worry about the saw cuts on the side, in which case I would make soft jaws so that I could plunge and use 1-inch material. But if we're into the tolerance, my 2.5 material is probably between 5 and 15 thousandths over in aluminum. And all of the materials called out aluminum, we may change so that we have those reduced and elevated speeds and feeds. We may change some of these over for the video to mild steel, or we'll pick a nice Hastelloy X or something just to make it interesting. You can draw, you can put it in reference wherever you want. The videos are going to be for suggestion and kind of what I do by habit, and stay with a common strategy. So if it works, maybe we have a machine or machinist dedicated to just squaring these up. And if they're already 2.5 by 2.5 by 1 inch, then all I'm concerned about it with the center geometry is that I'm hitting those the 1 inch. Oh, and they did do that off of the. So they you got to watch for the chain dimension off of the hole location. I just now noticed that I was about to put all the holes in the wrong spot. So since that came off of center line, then yeah, you would draw off a center line, but I would probably program in quadrant 4, which is just standard habit. And mainly that comes back to, this is the fixed jaw of my vise. I'm putting my work stop over on the left, and I think I mentioned already that it's more about most machinists being right-handed. I have the part in my right hand, I have the handle in my left hand. I put the part on the parallels in the vise, I bump it up against the stop, I close the vise. If we're a company of left-handed, then I'm going to reverse that and put the handle in my right hand, the part in my left hand, work stop goes on the right side. Whatever is convenient. Yes?
We're probably going to need stock bigger than 2.5, because otherwise when you drill your holes, you're going to be spinning parallels.
Yeah, so are we going to do soft jaws, or are we going to do sacrificial material on the thickness of the stock? So when at 1 inch material, ordering 1 1/4, not that much of an increase in stock, but it does mean I have to flip this over and blast the material off the backside after I'm done. If there's backside geometry, then not a big deal. We're just going to go ahead and finish. Maybe I want to run a counterbore or a chamfer routine across and do the deburr, so that we're building the deburr in. But you know, those are still tooling questions, and let's go ahead and draw this thing so that we can get on into lab and finish this out. All right, so.
And also, are we doing 125 surface finish unless called out?
With aluminum and the proper selection of tooling, we should be able to be between 16 and 32 without thinking about it. All right, so 2.5 by 2.5. Let's just start with a box. All right, so I'm going to go back to the view and fit. Nope, I guess not. Then I need to see if I put a pan on here. I did not. So let's add the fit. And all right, so that was the rotate. And so I'm holding down the control button, that's rotating. And on Mastercam, if I'm falling back on my SolidWorks, Alt and 1 is the top, Alt and 2 is the bottom, and then we're going to switch through and they're going to show, oh, I guess I got that wrong, left, right, and then isometric. So if you rotate over like I just did accidentally with the middle mouse button, then we'll hit Alt and 1 to bring it to size. All right, so let's go into the wireframe on the rectangle then. I'll see if there's something that I can use. All right, so we have width dimensions. If I anchor to the center, set the base point of the rectangle to the center point and draws the rectangle outward from the center. All right, so if I'm drawing from the center, that's going to be desirable. All right, the width is 2.5 and enter, and the height is 2.5 and enter. So we can see the preview and notice that my selection is at the middle of the box. So when I hover over the intersection, the origin, the intersection of my X and Y, that's going to give me that little green box, and it's showing me that it's at the intersection. So when I click, I'm going to get the box. Now when I either right click and fit, I have something that's the right size. I'm going to fill up the work area. I'm going to have that screen available. And then we're going to go ahead and accept. All right, so when we OK and then create the next, then that would leave us in the rectangle command. If I could just go ahead and hit OK, then it says, what do you want to do next? And then that's that nice selection color. Let's we're going to have to change that. Oh, and I don't see my, okay, there's the clear colors. Okay, if blue is going to be my object color, we're in trouble. All right, so we'll have to update that. And let's see if we have surface. There we go, wireframe color. Sorry, yellow was the selection color. All right, so I'm just highlighting it, going into the right mouse button, and I lost it. Come on. Getting click happy. So I don't mind the blue so much, I just don't want the one that's so dark. So let's go with the cyan. All right, so circle. I guess it would help to jump back and get a diameter. So diameter of 2 inches at the center. All right, so method manual. Radius is 2, and it should calculate the diameter is 2, and it should calculate the radius for us. All right, it looks like it's going to stay in my colors. We're going to go ahead and accept. So that is my highlighted color. So I'm still finding out where I need to set those. we're going to do the 0.25 diameter, and I need to enter that value. Oh, and notice the little box up here, the inner center point. If I just start typing 1 inch, I get a little pop-up window. 1, 1, and enter. All right, so where it says the enter the center point, I just click and start typing, and you'll get the box for the 1 inch. So let's go ahead and do another one. We'll go ahead and hit OK. Oh, I got out of it, sorry. So 0.25 on the diameter. Come out into the work area, 1 point, 1 point. So we're doing standard Cartesian coordinates. Oh, and I just put that one on top of that one, so we'll kick out of that. Those colors are really going to annoy me. All right. So the last one then was the through hole was 0.75. So circle 0.75, and its location will be at the center. All right, and then I want to introduce the mirror, so we'll go into transform and mirror, and we're picking the circle, checkbox to end selection, and apparently the X, so we're telling it to mirror over X. And going down through the list, we're going to copy. I made this selection, and it is mirroring across X, and we can go ahead and hit the OK and create new. And then we're going to pick both of those, and notice that the original selection is in red, and the mirrored selection is in, well, magenta. And so those are one of the reasons why we're going to have to clear colors. So when I end the selection, now I'm going to switch the axis to Y and get my other two hole locations. And then we'll go ahead and accept. And then we need the chamfers. So those were under the wireframe. And we had 4 times by 0.25. So we're going to chamfer the entities. I'm going to go with just the first one, so distance of 0.25, 45 degrees. So one distance creates a chamfer where the endpoints are positioned equal distance from the intersection. So that tells us where we're going to be selecting. If we do the 2 distances, then we can skew a little bit, distance and an angle. We'll be able to enter those values for the width. All right, so when I come back up and we select, then when I select the second line, and I'm just going to click around, we'll do the chamfer with the chains later on. All right, so other than my colors, I'm feeling like we're pretty good. Next week we'll be able to put some toolpaths on and get this. So saving this, I want to save this to my external drive. Background color font, okay. Not sure which one that was. Interesting. All right, so I'm not sure what toolbar that was. I'll use the quick access. And then I'm going to create a new folder for my, let's do the MCAMX. And assignment 1, and would appreciate it if you put your initials just in case. And we'll hit save. And then now we're ready to position this where we want. Okay, update the colors, then position this where we want to start machining from. Do some tool selections, start generating toolpaths. Any questions? All right, so
I guess we can watch the video over again.
Well, if you want to do it on the class computers, we're going to for lab, if you want to go through the process, we'll go do that for lab. If you're setting up your home computer, then yeah, you'll watch the video.